We're live.
Supposedly we're
Awesome.
live.
All right, give us a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear us and this is working. Isn't it supposed to show here?
And if we're actually live.
Sounds like we're live, I think. Can you guys hear us? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
That is what we need to know. This is what we need to know. Okay, that's muted. Yeah, I would think that we're probably live.
Okay. We're live and you can hear us. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Cool. Great. So we are going to do a Q&A about Epic today. We got a lot of questions, a lot of the same question, or
That's
same
true.
couple questions over and over.
Mm-hmm.
So we figured we would answer those. And also,
yeah, I mean, we'll go through these, but we have a bunch of questions from patrons first. We gave them kind of a like, hey, we're going to go live. Let us know what your questions are. So we'll start there, and then we will try to shuffle through this awesome
we are
going to
prioritize questions from patrons, questions about Breck Epic, and super chats, or just questions that we like, because we're the bosses. Yeah. Awesome.
Excellent.
So I'm going to ask the questions. Mackie hasn't read all of these yet, so that'll be kind of fun. I would say one question that came up over and over and over again, I think it was asked 3 times on Patreon, many times in the comment section, is how would you have done in Breck Epic if you had had gears? And this is very subjective.
Very subjective.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable saying I would have been top 10. I mean, I was 11th. I was 10 minutes behind 10th. Had I had gears, probably even on that last day, gears would have gotten me 10 minutes.
Because the last day was rough on a single speed.
Oh,
That's kind of was, I think, was the big day that you were like, oh, this held me back. Whereas the other days were like less that. So I think comfortably top 10. We definitely had a couple of people who were like, Mackie, I think you would have won the overall if you had gears. What do you think?
I don't think so. Keegan's riding really strong.
Yeah.
Jose, I think, was second.
For this right now. The top 5 guys, there was a pretty big gap. Like you would see the top 5 minutes, 10. So I really feel like Mackie would have slotted in there somewhere in the 6 to 10 for sure. And
our bandwidth. 50 upload should be enough bandwidth.
Yeah.
Let's close this. Let's turn Wi-Fi off on our phones.
Okay. Hold on. Give us 1 second.
Wi-Fi off.
All right. Is that better? How are we doing now?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay. Seems
How's the Wi-Fi in the shed? It's actually excellent.
Let's have a booster in here. So yeah, we turned off the Wi-Fi. I'm going to text everyone else and tell them to get off the Wi-Fi.
Good idea.
1 second.
Right after Keegan was strong. Basically, Keegan's riding extremely strong. The top 5 guys, as Sid was saying, there was kind of like those 5 and then kind of a gap to 6 through 10. So I think comfortably in the 6 through 10 range. I don't know besides that. Like I have raced Breck Epic before, but it totally depends on who shows up that year. 1 year I was 4th. That was awesome. I was also on an enduro bike. That was really awesome. But that was back in the day. It was a long time ago. Yeah. So
we almost just knocked over the whole computer. That probably wouldn't have helped.
That would not have helped.
All right, I'm going to pull up another question.
Okay, next question.
A lot of questions, and I've seen a couple in the chat already. Food. How do you determine how many calories you are eating a day? How did you keep eating that many calories?
Well, eating in races, obviously. Somebody asked for a t-shirt that says that. It's in the works. We're going to try to make that happen. So the way I figured out how many calories I should be eating was Mike said, this is how many calories you should be eating. And I said, okay. But I wanted to give you guys a better answer than that. So I asked Mike, how did he calculate how many calories I needed to be eating? And he said, he basically looked at like my peak 1 hour power. And it's basically your hour power is similar to how many calories you are burning in that hour. There's a complicated formula, but basically you divide it by 4 and multiply it by 4 and it comes out to the same thing. So that's the simple one. So he looks at that hour power and says, this is the number of calories that you are burning in an hour. And he tries to get me to eat that number of calories, which obviously is hard to do.
I thought it was like some percentage of that number of calories.
No, he was like, I looked at that and I divided that number by 30 minutes and I told you to eat that amount every 30 minutes.
Okay, so once I have the total number of estimated calories, I multiply by 0.35 and 0.4 to get a range, then divide that estimated number of hours to get the range for each hour. That's kind of confusing.
What? I missed this text from him, apparently.
Anyway, I guess the point is it's kind of complicated.
Okay, so basically...
He didn't do his research for this.
Yeah, so he looks at like my peak 1 hour power, then he adds a little bit, multiplies it by how many hours I'm going to be out there. So that's essentially like how many calories will I burn? And then multiplies that number by 0.35 and 0.4. So the goal is for me to eat slightly over a third of the calories that I'm burning.
It would be impossible to
eat that many calories.
Right? Yeah, totally impossible.
Yeah.
So we just got a question in the chat that I think we should tackle from Jaden. Why single speed?
Why
kind of big, but I feel like that's a common one. I also think there were a lot of people who watched the videos who kind of missed the memo that Mackie was racing other single speeders.
Yes.
And there were a lot of people like to be like, well, single speed appears to give you a disadvantage.
Yes. Yes. Single speed is a disadvantage. I raced single speed national championships this year, partially because the enduro and like the pro enduro and pro cross country were on the same days. And I was like, I'm not going to race both of those. So if I race the pro enduro, what else can I race? And I was like, oh, I could race single speed. And I just built up a single speed this year. And I was like, well, that would be really fun. That's going to be my goal. I want to try to win single speed national championships. And I did. At which point I was like, well, I've got the stars and stripes. I've got the sweet decals that Niner hooked me up with for that bike. Like, I'm going to race Breck Epic single speed. And yeah.
And you did.
And I did. And I finished and I won and I was almost top 10 in the overall. So
someone clarifies.
Yes.
Didn't I build the single speed?
Sid did build the single speed. You are correct. Yeah.
With some help.
A little bit of help, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you've always enjoyed single speed racing and riding. It's not really for everyone. A lot of people are like, why would you do that? But I think a perfectly good answer is because you can.
Yeah. And for the challenge, for fun,
keeps it interesting.
Yeah. I like racing all sorts of different kinds of bikes and different kinds of events because it helps me be a more well-rounded rider. And that's definitely my goal is I would like to be the best the most well-rounded rider that I can be. And single speed is another way of doing that is, when you only have one gear, you ride differently. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping to use many of the things that I learned at Breck Epic racing single speed when I go back and ride my geared bike. Because the truth is, I sort of proved to myself that I can power up these climbs in a bigger gear and pass people. So I'm like, okay, I should do that when I have gears also. And then instead of being spun out on the flat parts, I can just keep spinning.
Yeah.
So
question, what maintenance did I do after each stage?
That was another question on Patreon.
That was a question on Patreon
yeah.
as well. Well, actually, I think the question on Patreon was what did the support team role look like for this event? I know this role is often overlooked. Thank you, Alex, on Patreon for the recognition.
Yes.
But yeah, I think maintenance-wise, my dad actually was there, and he did most of the bike washing. He's much more type A about bike washing than either of us.
He's a meticulous bike washer.
I think I did it a couple times, and then he went and did it again.
Yeah, we did wash it once. Because I was all wet anyway, and I was like, I'll just wash it. And so I washed it. And then Jim came back and was like, who washed this bicycle?
But actually, Mackie's bike did not require a ton of maintenance. We did chain lube every night after the bike was washed and the drivetrain. It was just really just the chain.
Just the chain.
Was dried off. And then I would check his air pressure in the morning with the pressure gauge, not just the pump, because the pumps are all over the place. So we want to make sure he had the perfect amount of air starting every morning. And then the last stage we did swap a rear tire because after 5 days of racing he had started to wear the corner knobs on the tire, which is pretty good, actually. I would say
totally.
That's pretty standard.
I mean, that's like 190 miles of very hard stuff at race pace, which
descending.
is and race pace destroys things more than just regular riding does.
So I will say I got off easy on the bike mechanic role this week because he didn't have any mechanicals, which we can now say without knocking on wood.
Yep.
Usually Mackie has all the mechanicals during Breck Epic historically, so that was pretty amazing. Bike held up great, tires held up great. Like we said, we just swapped one right at the end for the last day.
Yep.
And no weird issues, which in the past you've often had just weird mechanicals, like your shoe falling apart and that kind of thing. So,
well, it also helps that we're now at a point in our careers where we have really good sponsors and people that we really like working with, and
we have equipment. That's not clapped
like
out,
ancient, and so that helps a lot. Like
early Breck Epic days with his old shoes, and
my shoes were probably like 3 years old, and I just tore the cleat out of the bottom, and I don't worry about that kind of stuff now.
Okay, so since we're talking about tires, how did tire choice work out from David on Patreon? I think you used 2.35. It looked like really rough trail and would have beat me up. Full suspension seems like it would have been a better choice. What setup would you recommend for non-single speed average Joe? So that's two questions. What were your tires? What would your setup be? What would you recommend for setup for someone who's maybe looking more for survival / comfort versus let's make this as hard as possible?
Yeah. So I ran a 2.25 Barzo XC trail casing on the front. It's Vittoria tire. I wanted the XC trail casing because I know those trails are really rough, and I was willing to sacrifice some weight to not flat.
And to not cut
sidewalls.
Because the race casings are super, super light. That's what you race for nationals. Yeah. Like you've had really good luck with them, but Breck Epic is another beast.
Breck Epic is
trail
ridiculous.
Casing for sure.
Yeah. And then I also did trail casing on the rear. I ran a 2.1 Mezcal. The reason I ran those sizes is because that's what we had. Like everybody else in the bike industry, Vittoria has limited stock of certain things.
What we have.
Yeah. And so I did those. I would probably, had I had access to every single possible option, I probably would have gone 2.35 on the front with the Barzo and a 2.25 on the rear with the Mezcal.
So it didn't seem to slow you down at all. So maybe this was the good.
I think it was fine. I think it would have smoothed things out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the bigger your tire, the more you can run slightly lower air pressure, and that just helps smooth things out. So
taking that back to David's question, for someone who wants to do this race but doesn't necessarily want to make it as absolutely hard as possible, what's the bike?
Full suspension.
Definitely. Full suspension cross country or full suspension trail? Or
if you're racing it, cross country full suspension for sure. Like for us, it would be the Rocket, the Niner Rocket, which is 100 in the back or 90 in the back, 100 or 120 in the front. Definitely would be the bike. If your goal is to finish and not suffer on the descents, I would go for a lightweight trail bike, which in our case would be like the Jet, which is 120 in the back, 130 in the front, a little bit more suspension, still super light, still pedals extremely well. Yeah. So that would
definitely want a light bike for this. There's a lot of climbing.
Yes. Yeah. But you also want to beef it up. Like you want a light bike that you beef up as opposed to like as light as possible, because otherwise you're going to flat, you're going to destroy things, you're going to like bad things are going to happen. And it's much better to have a little extra weight and not have those terrible things happen.
Do you feel good about the choice to go to the 120 mil fork, even though a lot of people complained that it didn't have the matching Stars and Stripes decals?
It did not have the matching.
We got the decals for the 100 mil fork, and then he decided to put the orange fork on, and people were like, "Why doesn't your fork match?" But sometimes function over form.
Function over form, and this is definitely. I'm very glad I had that 120 fork. Also, because the 120 was a factory, and it's like the new factory one, and the 100 was a performance. I believe the weight is pretty much the same. So I got 20 extra mils of suspension without any weight sacrifice.
Sweet.
Which was awesome. I also put a bigger rotor on the front, which I also think was a good choice personally. Like I put a 180 instead of a 160. little bit extra braking power on the descents, less likely to burn out the rotors because these descents are huge.
Yeah. And we just got a question about tire pressure. What tire pressure were you running?
I ran
I should know that because I put it in, but I forget.
Yeah, either 22 or 23 on the front and 27 or 28 in the back. I generally started lower, so like 22, 27, because I knew it was going to go up throughout the day as I went up in elevation and the temperature went up. Yeah.
Doesn't it go down when you go up?
No.
No, it goes up with both of those.
Up, because
the temperature seems to make a bigger difference in my experience. Like
temperature makes a lot of difference.
If you put your tire pressure when it's cold in the morning, it will be rock hard by midday. So that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question that I kind of like. My question is from Matthias. Did you crash at all? From watching your footage, it looks as you didn't, which makes your accomplishment even more insane because hardtail, 4 exclamation marks.
I crashed once. I fell over in some bushes.
Oh, you're counting that?
It is included on day 5.
It was going up a hill at like 0
miles an hour. It was like flat and really rocky, and I was like, ah, and then fell over in a bush. That was the only time I crashed.
Okay, so
I think I might have had one point where like I slid out in the corner and put a foot down and saved it.
That is not a crash.
No, it's not a crash. So no, I did not crash.
That is not a crash.
Did not crash.
Yeah, I mean the bush was kind of funny, but like not really much of a crash.
No, it wasn't really a crash. As Trails to Ales just pointed out, hit the thumbs up button. We have almost 300 people in here, which is really awesome. I think that's one of our highest ever live streams, but only 90 likes, which means a lot of people did not hit the thumbs up.
Then more people will see this live stream, supposedly.
Yes.
So they tell us.
Yeah.
We just got like 6 questions in a row about if you use lube like on your butt.
Chamois cream.
Chamois cream.
No.
He has sit bones of steel, you guys.
Well, so there's 2 aspects of that. Oops. One, I have been riding a bicycle for a long time. I have trained my rear end to sit on a saddle without any issues. That being said, for big events like Breck Epic, that is one of the few times I would consider using chamois cream. I used to use chamois cream all the time, like every ride. And then I had a coach who pointed out that if you do that, you're essentially lotioning your butt every day, and that softens the skin. Softening the skin makes it easier for it to get chafed and easier to get infections, saddle sores, etc. So if you're going to use chamois cream, save it for big rides, big events, etc. Don't use it every day, or you will actually make your likelihood of getting issues. And you
worse. I mean, this is personal, but did you have any
I did not have
chafing issues? If you're not remembering, they obviously weren't that bad.
They weren't terrible, but I think I had like one saddle sore that I was kind of like, ooh, I'd hope this doesn't turn into something worse. And I was careful. And the biggest thing you can do is never rewear the same chamois without washing it. Shower after riding and dry yourself very well down there.
And as someone pointed out, like saddle position is important.
Yeah.
So get a bike fit if you're routinely having a lot of issues.
Totally. That can make a big difference.
It's not normal to always. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like, oh, you're weird, you know, right? Like it happens. It's common, but it's not necessary.
It shouldn't happen. You shouldn't continuously have saddle sores. So that's probably
look into bike fit issues for sure. All right. We've got a lot of training questions. I think we should kind of move into that. But one question that I just want.
That's a lot of questions. That's awesome.
A lot of questions. One that I just really liked is from Maggie. In hindsight, which was harder, Breck Epic on a single speed or Everesting?
Everesting.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, and part of that, yeah, totally. Well, part of that is that I have trained, once again, for many, many years to ride my bike for 1.5 to 3 hours while going really hard. I have not spent much time training to ride my bike for 18 hours without stopping. Yeah. And that's what I had to do for Everesting.
Yeah. And I think in Macky's case, like your longest day at Breck Epic was still under 4 hours, I think.
4:08.
Was it? Okay.
I believe was my longest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just like take a moment to appreciate the people. And there were many people in this race who were more in that 6 to 8 hour range every single day. And the reality is stage races like this are way harder for people at the back of the pack. You're all going just as hard. it does make things easier to be as fast as he is, to be totally honest.
Oh, for sure. Like when people are like, I'm so impressed. I'm like, I'm so impressed that you were out there twice as long as
it's
me.
way more impressive.
Way more impressive.
No offense.
No,
you were pretty impressive.
No, it totally is.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm going very hard, but I have trained to go this hard. People who have not spent as much time training as me are going just as hard for themselves. They're just doing it for twice as long.
And like, it's really like
amazing.
It's really brave to sign up for one of these events when you don't have like the background that MACKY does. Like, I've never done Breck Epic. If I do Breck Epic, I want to be so ready, right? Because I don't want to be out there for 7 hours. I'm not into that. You also get the brunt of the weather. Just to back up, there was a question very early on that was, how bad was the weather on day 5?
For me, it was fine. It was
unpleasant.
Cold and wet, but like whatever. I was like, I'm gonna be out here for 3.5 hours. Like, I'm gonna be cold and wet.
It was very dangerous for the people at the back of the pack because thunder, lightning at 13,000 feet.
It was sleeting.
It was hailing. There was visible hail on top of that mountain the next morning when we got up. So I think Breck Epic did a great job of just getting everybody off.
They kept everybody safe.
And I think someone asked, how did they do the times for that? Basically, they took the time of the last person to finish who got through the cutoff point. And I think he finished in like 6.5 hours. And then they gave everyone after that the same time. That was like 2 minutes.
Plus 1 minute.
But yeah, plus
they added 1 minute and gave everybody the same time.
So I think that was a very good way of doing it because it's a nightmare scenario for a race promoter. So shout out to them for sure.
Somebody asked if I was wearing elbow or knee pads. No, I don't wear elbow and knee pads when I race cross country. I could. Ours are pretty comfortable, but I'm so used to not, and I'm so used to riding trails that are at least that difficult, generally more difficult, that I feel like I can ride in control while still riding fast.
And that actually segues nicely into a question on Patreon from Will. This is, how much does your downhill technique change riding a hardtail? I would say probably it changes the most, just like cross-country race to enduro race. Like, there's a different mindset for sure.
Yeah, also on the hardtail, you do have to be a little bit more cautious of your line choice because you don't have suspension that will, like, if you smash your rear wheel into something on a full suspension, the bike will go bloop and like suck up that thing. On a hardtail, it will not. And so you have to be more careful about that, or you risk puncturing your rear tire.
Or going, whee.
Yeah, I don't worry about that as much as flatting.
I do when I'm on a hardtail. I feel like I just bounce everywhere.
Yeah. Shout out to Trails to Ales for the super chat.
Thank you. And
Burrito Bucks.
We got to meet Trails to Ales this year, which was very exciting because we've been internet friends for a very long time.
I know.
So
it's
that
true.
was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into some training questions here. Pete asks, did you do anything special to prepare for a high altitude course like Breck Epic? I trained at 6,000 to 9,500 feet for the Leadville 550 this year, but the 11,000 to 12,000 foot sections devastated my power output and overall time. I was barely moving at times up there. I'd like to do better in the future, but those 5-digit altitudes are not really convenient to my area.
Yeah,
that's probably true for many.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate in that near where we live in Taos, New Mexico, is Fraser Mountain, which is where I did my Everesting, and it tops out at 12,137 feet. So it's pretty easy for me to get up above 12,000 feet without like a huge driving across the country or anything like that.
10 minutes.
Yeah, we drive 20 minutes and then I climb for an hour. But like, that's great practice for me. I also grew up in New Mexico. Like, I basically, when I started riding a bike, I was my family had moved to New Mexico. So I'm used to this elevation. And I don't notice it. I just don't really. I
think we're probably not the best people to ask about this because we are currently sitting at 8,300 feet. This is our base normal. Yes. That said, I grew up in Ohio. I feel like for me, the shift was actually quite a bit mental with altitude. Is there was a period where I realized, everyone is out of breath at 12,000 feet. Everyone slows down at 12,000 feet.
Totally.
it's kind of like a race that's really muddy, right? The mud is the same for everyone. Like people who train in the mud are going to have an edge in the mud. People who train in altitude are going to have an edge in altitude. If you're coming from absolute sea level, like you probably need to have some acclimatization time and maybe look into, I don't know, people train in like high altitude chambers and weird things like that. But I think the reality is, if you can kind of reframe it, especially for Pete, who he's saying he did train at 6,000 to 9,500 feet. So that tells me like you're fine, right? Like you're not coming from sea level to 12,000. Yeah. Sea level to 12,000 is asking a lot of your body. 9,500 to 12,000, none of us live at 12,000 feet.
Totally.
A squirrel just dropped a nut on the roof or something. It was really loud. So yeah, if you can reframe that mentally a bit, it's like everyone has the same amount of oxygen and everyone is slowing down. Like power goes down over 10,000 feet for everyone. Heart rates go up over 10,000 feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like Pete was doing the right thing. He was training as high as he could, trying to prepare for it. And it's just, honestly, it's time. It's like getting used to that feeling of being out of breath and like miserable. So you're like, okay, I'm out of breath and miserable and I'm going to keep going hard.
Someone says not even trees live at 12K. Good point.
That's a very good point. Also, shout out to DM MDB for the super chat. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Also, I really like this jumping sticker.
Oh yeah, it's pretty great.
I think it's a lemon. Yeah, not even trees. I like that. Sherpas should take up mountain bike racing. Probably.
So I'm having trouble actually finding the question, but I feel like there was a question somewhere, and that's also been repeated here a bit, of walking versus riding on the single speed. How much walking were you doing? How did you decide when to start walking?
So this is something that was actually very different from when I raced Breck Epic on a single speed in 2012. So I have raced Breck Epic on a single speed before. 2012. I basically finished the race season, had like a good, or like most of the race season, had a good geared race season, and then was like, I'm going to do a single speed racing. I raced Breck Epic. I raced like one or two other races, and then I raced single speed world championships in South Africa. So I had like no single speed experience at that point. And I basically just like showed up and gutted my way through Breck Epic, and great. Yeah. Like I did it. It was cool. This time I was like, oh, I have a brain. I should use this brain. Strategy. I can practice and try different things. So for those of you who watched the Breck Epic training camp, like training video, I basically started off with the gearing that I'd used at Nationals and went and rode at Fraser because I was like, they're going to be steep. They're going to be hard. Like it's high. Is this the right gear?
You hated it so much.
It was not the right gear.
I edited out so much whining.
It was very painful, but it was helpful for me because I realized I could go to about 10% gradient on that gear before it got real hard. And if it was long, I would need to get off at about 10%. So then the next time, a couple days later, I went back up there on the single speed, but I swapped my gearing to be 30-20, which is what I ended up racing for Breck. And I figured out on that one, I could go up to about 12% fairly comfortably riding. And then steeper than that, I would have to get off it if it was long. So then while I was racing, I was able to look at my cycling computer and say, look, this is a 12% climb. Like, this is right on the edge for me. How long does it go? And like, look and be like, okay, this is a long one. Like, I think I can keep pedaling this. Or look at it and be like, oh, this is a 15 or 20% climb. How long does it go? Oh, it goes for a long time. I'm not going to pedal this. I'm going to get off and walk. So I was able to use technology and my brain to actually make decisions while I was racing. And I had practiced them before to know what sort of gradients I could and couldn't do. And I think that was really helpful for me because it made me it kind of gave me a level where it was like, if it's steeper than this, I'm just going to get off, instead of like trying to crank my way through it and then exhausting myself and then being exhausted for either the rest of the day or the rest of the week. That makes sense?
Yeah. And thanks to Cow? I'm sorry.
KO
for the super chat.
Tell us how it's pronounced.
I apologize
please.
if I butchered your name.
Yeah. I love the avocado.
Yeah, and we have a cheering avocado, which is totally our style.
Yep.
The cheering avocado.
100%.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about how you used the Stages Dash. We have a question from Nick about that. While riding racing, what, if any, information do you look at on your Stages Dash, i.e. miles per hour, heart rate, RPM? Do you use this info to push harder or back off so you don't overdo it? I will also sort of combine this with a question I've seen a couple of times in the chat, which is you got lost a couple times. Why? Was the course marking bad?
Yeah,
was that on you? Were you actually lost?
Yeah. So let's answer the lost one first.
Yeah.
There were 2 points where I was like, am I lost? I don't know where to go from here. One was because I was in the pain cave and I was following the signs and turned onto a dirt road or a fire road basically and started climbing up it. And then was like, was there a turn back there? Did I miss a turn? I'm not sure. This doesn't look like there's any tracks, because it was a section that didn't show tracks, but I was like, I can't tell. And then I turned around, rolled back down. I had not missed a turn, so I turned around and went back up. Basically, that was me just being exhausted and tired and doubting myself.
And I think in general in these races and in cross-country races in general, it is so much easier to think you're lost than to actually be lost.
That is
usually the marking is really, really good. It was for
Breck
all
Epic
the days of Breck Epic.
Yeah.
I think the only time I remember anyone getting lost at Breck Epic was years ago, and there was actually course sabotage. Someone who wasn't happy about the race course going on their local trails went out and turned markers around. So the lead 20 guys got lost. And that was always a bummer. I think the marking was excellent, but you're in race mode and you're out there by yourself. Mackie was completely by himself, and I think that's hard for even me to realize, because when we raced BCBR, I was towards the top, probably 15% of the women in that, but we were surrounded by guys the entire time. So it really felt like a race. And one day when I was up there watching Mackie, he was 5 minutes behind the guy in front of him and 12 in front of the guy after him. And you are by yourself, you are in the wilderness, and there's a little voice in your head going, what if?
Yeah, what if you got lost?
What if I missed a turn?
Yeah.
And I think that was more what happened there than anything else.
Yeah. So the second time was up kind of on the top of Miners Creek.
Yeah.
And that one was just I think when I was watching the footage later, I was like, oh, it's kind of obvious that the trail goes off this way, but I was expecting to drop over onto the other side.
You were going downhill.
I was hoping I was going downhill, so I expected it to go up and over, and it didn't. And so that was why I got lost. And that day I had loaded the GPS tracks onto my Garmin, but I'd forgotten to actually activate that day. So as I was wandering around, wondering where I was supposed to go, because like a dummy, I hadn't loaded it. I loaded it, and then it showed me that I need to just keep going along the ridge.
Yeah. So huge thanks to the super chats. We have something from PRZ out or Prezout. And Yo Eddie and Jose. We got a hamburger from Jose and a burrito from Yo Eddie.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yep.
Keeping us fed.
Thank you guys very much.
It's hard to feed him after Breck Epic.
It is hard to feed me.
So back to Nick's question. What were you looking at on your dash, basically?
So I have a number of screens set up on my Stages dash. I essentially have a training screen, and training screen is heart rate, power, cadence, because all of my intervals are based on heart rate, power, and cadence. Usually power and cadence. When I'm racing, I do not look at those personally. That's because, once again, I have been racing. I've had a pro card for 15 years now. I've done a lot of bicycle racing.
You know when you're going too hard.
I know when I'm going too hard. I know when I could go harder. Every once in a while, I will switch to that screen if I'm like, ooh, am I going too hard? Or should I be going harder? I can just swap to that screen real quick and be like, yep, not going hard enough. Time to go harder. Or, ooh, that's a really high heart rate. I should back off a little bit. So I have it in case I need it, but I don't generally use that screen while racing. For this race, for Breck Epic, I often had the map up because it was really nice to be able to, especially on descents, say oh, look, switchbacks are coming up. I can rip this section really fast.
I don't know how you were descending that stuff while staring at
the
computer screen.
But that's the thing is you don't stare at it. You're riding and you glance down and be like, there's a switchback coming up. So I know that I can't just full speed all the way along this, I need to back it down a little bit because there is going to be a switchback.
I don't do that when I'm going downhill at all. I've never tried though.
You've never tried.
Try it. Yeah.
But anyway, that was helpful for me. It also gave me like how much climbing to the end. So I could say like, oh, I still have 1,000 feet to climb, or I still have 300 feet to climb. And that would give me an idea of how sort of hard I could go, knowing how far I had, well, both how far and how much climbing I had left. So I liked more those informational screens, elevation, gradient, that kind of stuff, than the biometrics, because those biometrics I've just learned to like push the way I should be pushing.
Cool.
Yeah. Shout out to Carl.
Yeah.
For the super chat. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a question from Trails to Ales.
Interrupt you real quick.
Out. Oh.
Lawrence asks, what Garmin do I use? So we use the Stages Dash. It's Stages Cycling. We ride for them. Their Dash is another cycling computer. I generally use the L50, although I sometimes use the M50. Sid usually uses the M50. They're just basically different sizes. So for enduro stuff, I use the smaller one because crashing. And for cross-country stuff, I use the bigger one because I often will load maps and stuff.
Because you still broke it.
I did
so
drop
many
it in
comments
gravel.
about people were like, why didn't Stages get you a new one? Well, because it was in the middle of
the race.
And then it got wet on day 5. And then we had to leave it in the rice. Yeah. It did actually kind of recover from that.
No, it's actually doing okay. Yeah. I just felt dumb because it wasn't from a crash or anything. I dropped it face down on really sharp gravel. So that was 100% on me.
Cool. Question from Trails to Ales. And then I think it's sort of segued into here. Mackey says the walking strategy includes breathing through his nose. Did that actually happen during the race? I imagine if the climb is tough enough that walking is the strategy, breathing through your nose at this point would really be a challenge. And I want to kind of combine that with a comment that we got a lot on the videos is, how do you have so much breath control to be able to talk to everyone you see and talk to the camera? A lot of people are wondering about that. So I think those are kind of related.
I would say that racing a 6-day stage race, I am not going like at my red line. I'm not redlining during that race. Every once in a while, something will kick up, or I'll try to catch somebody and I'll push really hard to like connect with them, because then I can back off a little bit and, you know, draft them or whatever. For the most part, I'm riding below my threshold. The reason for that is that it's a 6-day stage race. And if you're riding at your threshold the whole time, you aren't going to be able to recover for the later days. And therefore you could have one really good day and then you're kind of done for after that. So that was part of it, is I was not riding at threshold, and therefore I had a little bit of extra energy, I guess is the way to put it, to be able to talk to the camera. In terms of hikers and horses and that kind of stuff, personally, I believe that the most important thing we as mountain bikers can do is be polite, kind, friendly trail users. Like almost all of the complaints that people have, enduro bikes, e-bikes, etc., it's not actually about the bike. It's about the person on the bike.
Being a jerk.
Yeah. And so if you
don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk, but like tell somebody when you're coming up behind them, hey, I'm behind you. Is there a spot that I can get by? If somebody is behind you and they say that to you, you say, hey, I hear you. I'm looking for a spot. Like just communicating and smiling and being friendly goes such a long way. And that's how we will keep trail access. And that's how we will get more trail access. And being a jerk is going to get us kicked off of trails. And I want more trails. And
I think in general, like especially with cross country racing, if someone's ahead of you, they got there first. The best way, and I think you saw this in the vlogs, is Mackey really had a rapport with the guys that he was racing with. They knew he was on a single speed. They knew that he was going to go blowing past them on climbs of a certain grade, and then they were going to pass him while he was walking, and that he was going to go past them on the descent. And I just think it was awesome to see, like when I was editing all that footage, of how kind everyone was. Like he would pass someone on the descent and they'd be like, you're looking great, good job, you know. So it was really encouraging. Kind of back to the nose breathing, though.
As part of that, Chad just commented, and Chad was one of the guys who I was racing around. So shout out to Chad for being super cool whenever I caught him, and I hopefully was cool when he caught and passed me back.
There's a lot of leapfrogging.
Through
the Mackey being on a single speed while also being like a really good descender. Like I think that combination,
that surprised some people.
Yeah. But the nasal breathing, were you able to use that during the race to kind of calm the breath down when you walk? Like, I'm going to add to that question a little bit, actually, because for me, I've noticed that if I have to get off and walk something, I usually get a bit of like a heart rate spike as I get off the bike. There's just something about that you're in a zone and then you get off and you start walking. Were you getting off before you got to that point?
Well, part of it is when you normally have to walk
Yeah.
in a race, it's like it's something super steep and you're like trying to like run up it as fast as you can.
Sure.
That was not when I would get off to ride something or get off to walk something. Yeah. I would get off when it was like, this is too steep. And I was not running up it because I knew I might be walking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I would get off the bike. I would start walking. I would try to like calm myself down. I'd try to eat something. I'd try to drink something. It was all about like using the fact that I had to walk anyway as a way to do the other things that I should be doing. And in terms of breathing, I was able to do that some. I just forgot a lot of the time. Like if I had remembered more, I would have done it more. But even while you're racing, like if you're pedaling hard, if you breathe in, like in through your nose, out through your mouth 5 times in a row, that's what Mike always has us do. It helps like calm your heart rate down, helps you get kind of more, your breathing's under control and you're able to go harder at the same breath. So it makes a big difference. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Jen for the super chat. Any power numbers you'd be willing to share with us about over the race? So I haven't really looked carefully at my power numbers, but everything is on Strava. So all of my rides or all of my days are on Strava and they're all public. So you're welcome to check out those. We put links to those in the description of each video.
We'll just pull a normalized power from one day. Which day do you want me to pull?
Not 5 and not 6. Let's do like 3, 2 or 3. Yeah.
Breck Epic. What
That's day 5.
This is 5.
Says it there.
Oh, there you go. Day 4.
Let's do day 3.
Do 3. Okay. 4 hours and 16 seconds. I think it was less than that, but that's your
I think that was
40.6 miles. 208 TSS on
that's high.
On Training Peaks. If you know, you know.
Yeah. My average heart rate was 135. My max was 160. So for me,
normalized power map.
Max heart rate for racing or like heart rate for racing is generally 160 to 165. So what that says to me is that I did get up there a little bit, but I was not up there all of the time by any long shot. And then normalized power for the ride is 230 watts. And that may have included, no, I don't think that included the warm up. So yeah. 230
watts for 4 hours is not too shabby.
Yeah. And that sounds about right. Cause I've looked like even at my national champs one, which was a much shorter race and only one, I don't think the nominal was much higher than that because it's not like you're at your absolute max power the entire time. Like you are pedaling harder and pedaling not as hard, blah, blah, etc. So, and then shout out to Deborah for the flying avocado. Excellent.
The avocados are crushing it here.
Excellent.
All right, let's see. I think we've had some recovery questions here from Greg. After a sustained high effort race like this, or even a tough single day, what things do you do to recover? Someone else, it's another Greg, actually. The Gregs have recovery questions. So it was he was at Breck Epic racing geared and said it was hard to ride within my limits and be able to recover between days. So I think there's 2 questions there. The one is, how did you recover between each day? And then how did you recover after the race? I'm going to go ahead and say you did one of those things way better than you did the other.
Oh, yeah?
Well, the recovering after like the past 3 weeks.
Oh, like after the race.
Yeah, after.
Got it.
Like
recovering
each day,
between days, I did a good job. I would basically finish, hang out a little bit, try to, talk to the other guys who were racing, congratulate everybody, head back to the condo. I'd drink a recovery drink. I would eat lunch. I would take a shower and I would take a nap. And then after that, I was usually pretty tired, but I tried to get out of bed at that point and then not be in bed.
So you were successful most days.
Yeah, I think there was one day
we would go to the award ceremony.
Yep.
And then we come back.
Yep. So I tried to move some. I didn't specifically do any stretching unless it was like, oh, this is kind of sore. Like I'm going to stretch that. For the most part, I just kind of, did just moved a little bit, like going to the awards ceremony and going to the riders meeting. Like I had to walk, and so that was
we
good.
did go in the river one day.
That's true.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then recovering after the race, I have, like Sid said, I've not done a great job. Things have been a little bit stressful just with some life stuff that's going on. Nothing crazy or anything, just actually exciting.
Life can be stressful.
Life can be stressful, yeah.
And it's important to remember that counts as stress.
Yep.
We got a message a while ago from someone who was like, I work 3 days in a row, so I have 4 days to train. What should I do on those 4 days? I'm like, you have to rest, because if you're working 3 days in a row, like you're probably doing some sort of shift work, like that counts too.
Totally.
Work counts.
Yep.
Life counts. Stress counts.
And I think as part of that, stress, we say stress, and we usually mean that as a negative thing. But there are two types of stress. There is distress, which is like bad stress, being stressed out about money or whatever. And then there's eustress, which is positive stress. And the example that Mike gave us at one point is when we were getting married a number of years ago. He's like, this is still, oh, hey, Mike. Mike was like, this is still stress. Like, it's a positive thing. You're getting married, but there is still stress surrounding this event and preparing, etc. So we have had some stress recently, and that is not a great way to recover. I have not ridden much. I've now ridden 3 times since Breck Epic. It's been 2 weeks. But just I haven't done a great job of like taking time off from other requirements. And therefore I am still tired and not recovered at all.
I think those stage races are particularly hard for that, because you essentially took a whole week off from other life things to do this race. So stuff piled up.
Yep.
And we wanted to edit all 6 videos.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Yeah, stage race video editing after the stage race.
And I got sick in there, which really didn't help.
Yep, that was bad.
So yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not sure what exactly the side of the question. I think people were more asking how do you recover between days, but I do think it's important to just note that,
And even if I had done everything perfectly after Breck Epic and there hadn't been all this stress and we weren't stage race video editing, etc., I would still be tired, because it just takes a long time to recover from an event like that. People are like, oh, I'm not sore anymore, therefore I'm recovered. And just because you're not sore does not mean you're recovered. If you find yourself getting annoyed more easily than usual and finding everybody around you really annoying, even though they might not actually be really annoying, you're probably not recovered. So shout out to Maestro for another super avocado. Those avocados are so good. Somebody had asked about my shoes and hiking with my shoes. So the first day I wore my kind of more XC shoes, which have a stiffer sole, great power transfer. I really like them. They were not as comfortable for hiking, and I gave myself a blister. So after that, or maybe that was the second day, after a day or two, I swapped to my enduro shoes, which are more comfortable for hiking. Still pretty good power transfer, but they're not quite as stiff as like traditional XC shoes. I was very happy that I wore those shoes because there was plenty of hiking. And a lot of my competitors were very jealous of my shoe choice when I walked by them. They're like, dang, you got the hiking shoes. I was like, oh yeah.
So if you ever do Breck Epic, get yourself some enduro shoes, because some of the shoes people were wearing on day 5 where everyone is hiking. Like, none of them made it with no hiking, I'm sure.
It's worth it. It's worth losing a little bit of power to be comfortable and not get blisters.
Totally.
Because that's going to slow you down more.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we got a question about off the bike nutrition in terms of recovery. Was there an overall plan, i.e. percent protein, carbs? No.
We don't follow like a diet. We basically, we make our food from scratch almost all the time. And
there was no we during that week. I
just
like to say that.
But in general, we make our food from scratch. We eat everything. There's nothing we don't eat. And during the race, Sid basically came up with a meal plan and made food, and I ate it.
And I really think for this kind of racing, you need to eat whatever you can.
Mm-hmm.
Mackie and I both don't really struggle with eating particularly. Like I didn't have this issue at BC Bike Race, but a lot of people were talking about at this race that they just didn't want to eat. They weren't interested in food.
I did actually start feeling that towards the end,
Yeah.
which is weird for me. Normally I have no problem eating, and at the end I was like, okay,
eating wins races.
Gotta keep eating.
Eating
wins races. Yep.
So if you do have a nutrition plan that you generally follow, you should, do the same thing during the race, but also like probably not, just don't be restrictive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you are supposed to eat this many grams of protein, but you want to eat a bag of potato chips, you need to eat the bag of potato chips. Like This is one of those situations where there really is no bad food as long as you are eating. Obviously, like we put things in front of Mackie this week that were whole food, nutritious, etc. Like you want to have those options available to you. Like you don't want to be in a situation where you are grocery shopping for yourself after 4 days of racing and you're starving.
Because we know what you'll end up with.
But at the same time, is if nothing sounds good except potato chips and gummy bears, like go for it.
Yeah. Somebody asked to follow up on the shoe question, what shoes? We ride for Pearl Izumi. We wear their shoes. I wore the XL Elevates. Those were the like enduro shoes, and they were definitely the right choice for me.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Thanks for the super chat from Crisco Bike. What's the weirdest thing your brain has thought when you were way out there alone?
I don't remember.
What about your whole thing about inventing planets?
Yeah, I can't remember if I thought of that while I was racing or not.
At some point, Mackie, we were like standing in the river, and he's like, I've been thinking today about how if I could invent a planet that was, I don't even remember what it was, but basically the concept would be there would be a river like this, like all year round without all the snow that Breckenridge gets.
Yeah.
But it was way more in depth than that. I think that's what you were thinking about for like 2 hours while you were riding.
It's true. I was planning about how this river, summer plus a really nice cold river all the time would be awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chris Myers for the super chat. It says, late to the game, how many times did you tell yourselves, WTF am I doing? I could be hanging on the couch. I don't think that crossed my mind because I'm pretty good at race brain. And race brain basically is like, you're on your bike, you're racing, go. I would say that in the mornings, before the race started, I did a certain amount of that. Like,
the mornings were
it's
hard.
morning. I don't want to go. I don't want to go hard. Like, it would be so much nicer to just soft pedal all day. Like, my brain definitely went through a lot of like, why are you doing this? Why, like, just take it easy or just quit? And, I did not do that, which I'm very glad I did not. But it's normal to have those thoughts. So if you have those thoughts, that's okay. Yeah. Like, showing up is what matters. Doesn't matter what your brain tells you before you show up or while you have shown up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is, I think, helpful to not think too much about what you are doing. I think Mackie's very good at that, where he doesn't spend a ton of time obsessing over like the length of the race, the elevation profile, totally. How long is it going to take? Is this climb going to really suck? Yeah. Like, it's kind of like you just show up and you do it in the moment. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation, a little bit of this got into, I think, the day 4 vlog, where basically I was saying to him, like, this is the 4th day. Like, this is fourth day is kind of the hump day, right? Like, when you start the 4th day, you're halfway done. Yeah. When you finish it, you're 2/3 of the way done. Yeah. However, on that day, like, you have to be just doing a bike race. Like, you're not doing a bike race that you have to do 2 more tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah, you can't think about it. Yeah, you're just like, oh, this. I'm just doing a race, and it's fine. Yeah, that definitely is part of it. And
like, if you feel, someone said, love your strategy about knowing the suffering will change. Totally. Mm-hmm. Like, if you feel bad now, that's just now. Yeah. Like, you don't know yet if you're going to feel bad 10 minutes from now.
No.
You might not.
Although if you don't eat and drink, I guarantee you will feel bad. Guaranteed. Thank you to David for the super chat. Also, the avocado says, thanks for being you, which cute. I really like.
Just making sure. Yeah, cool. There were a couple of good questions in here. Someone asked about the camera setup. I think we should answer that real quick.
That's true. A lot of people have asked.
We got a lot of questions in the comments of people just being like, how did your GoPro battery last this long? It only died on day 5, which was because it was cold. But he's turning it on and off.
Yeah, we don't run our batteries continuously. The amount of footage we had to go through just to edit these videos was more than enough. Having 3-4 hours of footage from every day would have been terrible. So I turn the camera on, I turn the camera off. I try to keep it to like 3 to 5 minutes of recording tops, and I try to do something interesting. So if I have to get off and walk, or if I'm going to pass somebody, or if I'm about to start a descent, those are times I'll usually turn it on. Or if like the weather is doing something crazy, or I see a cool animal. But in general, it's, turn it on, whatever happens, turn it off. And I do that over and over. And that way we were able to not have a crazy amount of footage.
And I think a lot of people are like, how do you do that while racing? How do you talk to the camera? First of all, Mackie's amazing. He does it for all of you and everyone on Patreon. But I also think like there is a benefit to it for you as well. Like it's good to have a little bit of a distraction.
Yep, totally. It's helpful for me to like have something else that I'm thinking about also, as opposed to just the race and like where I am and who's in front of me and
Yeah, and I think it kind of takes you a bit out of that like if you are having a bad time, like it's kind of like we do know like thousands of people will be watching this footage, right? Like
you can laugh at yourself.
Right. And I think it sounds kind of cheesy, but I do think like positivity can kind of be forced, especially in a race setting. Like if you're out there by yourself in the middle of nowhere and you're feeling awful, like it's really easy, I think, to have a pity party.
Oh yeah.
But if you know
Poor
that
me.
you can kind of turn on the camera and be like, man, not feeling so good. Like, wonder what's going to happen. Like, if,
I'm probably hungry. I should eat something.
Right. It's like things become more obvious when you think about them from the perspective of like, what is the person viewing this video going to think? They're going to be like, Mackey, why are you not eating?
Yeah, you are a dummy.
Thanks, Rev, for the super chat. Awesome. Really appreciate it. And Chris Myers as well. Favorite Mexican food?
Burritos.
And definitely burritos. I mean, yeah.
I'm a burrito guy. What can I say?
Burritos are so versatile, though. I feel like that's very broad. But,
that's true. If I had to choose one, though, it'd be a breakfast burrito.
Yeah.
I love me a good breakfast
green chili.
Oh, yeah. We had a couple of questions that I had written down because they were from either questions during the race videos, calories, GoPro, tires. Oh, yeah. People asked if you could change bikes and change gears between different days of Breck. My understanding is yes.
You could change bikes?
Oh. I mean, if you think about it,
definitely change gears.
You can definitely change gears, meaning like change what gearing the single speed was. I almost did that for the last day, but I decided not to. I wish I had in hindsight. And then in terms of changing bikes, I think you can with Breck because it's not like there's really many days where like one different kind of bike is going to be that beneficial to you.
That's true. And Breck is Mike Mack, who runs Breck. Yeah, he is definitely one of the coolest race promoters out there. Like he doesn't have a rule book. His rules are basically
number 1 is don't be a jerk.
I think it's worded slightly differently, but yeah.
This is a PG channel, Sid. One of the rules is don't litter. I can't remember what the third one is. But those two right there, don't be a jerk and don't litter, like that pretty much covers a lot of stuff.
And people did a really good job with it too. Awesome. Like every day after the race, they would show how much trash they had picked up. And it was usually like very clearly stuff that just like fell out of people's pockets.
Yeah, people weren't like throwing their trash. They like stuck it in their pocket and it like fell out.
Or like you lost a water bottle, maybe 2.
Somebody asked about that. I think I lost 4 water bottles.
Did you really lose 4? Yeah. Hardtail problems, basically.
Hardtail problems.
So that doesn't count as littering.
No.
They
understand that happens. Yeah.
3 is C number 1, says Mike.
Thank you.
That's why we didn't remember it.
Yeah.
Really, there's 2 rules.
Yeah, there's 2 rules. Don't litter, don't be a jerk. Excellent. I think that was all the questions that I had. We answered the other ones.
Okay.
We could see.
Someone asked what mechanical issues. No mechanical issues. during this race,
no
which is
mechanical
kind of a
issues.
miracle. So
It's totally a miracle.
the system was pretty awesome. Oh, here's a good question from Shanson. Thank you for the super chat. And what percentage of your riding did you do on single speed versus geared leading up to the race? We don't know an exact percentage.
Yeah, so the race week or the race training week that I did, like for Breck Epic, was I think 2 single speed rides, 3 single speed rides. It was about half and half.
Yeah.
Then I did a race in Steamboat. That one, some of it was on geared because it was an enduro, and then I did a single speed race, and that was obviously all single speed. So I would say probably in the half and half range leading up to Breck Epic. And before that, it was primarily geared with like once a week on the single speed just to kind of remember what it felt like. But then as I got closer to Breck, it was more time on the single speed. Also, you'll have to apologize. I'm crying out of this eye because I touched my eye and I had poblano pepper.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll get over it.
Like he was roasting some peppers, making some salsa.
That's right. Jonathan DeFoy says, "What was the prettiest view during the race?"
I feel like I should answer that
as the editor. You'll have to have Sid. That was the thing is I didn't really notice views. Like every once in a while, I'd sort of notice enough to be like, I should turn on the camera now, and then I'd turn it on. But it was afterwards watching the footage that I was like, oh, these are the nice views. So what do you think was the best view?
Coming off the top of Wheeler on day 5, where you were descending into the clouds, was by far the most epic. I don't know if it was necessarily the best view, but it was the most dramatic, and that was my favorite section to edit.
That was really cool.
As well. Okay, we had a couple questions, and we had questions in the comments as well about this of like, why were the trails not closed? Why were there other people on the trails? This is what was with all the traffic on the trails. It's not really practical for a race like Breck Epic to lock down every trail in Breckenridge for a week, essentially, which is what they would have to do. And as far as the horses go, that was a known issue. They were not on course for the entire time. My understanding, it was like kind of a couple mile section, and those were people who run tours on horses.
And we were warned that we might see horses.
Right. So basically, the tour company said, no, we're not running tours on this day because you're doing a bike race. So a lot of people were like, why would people ride their horses there? Well, they're getting paid. That's their job.
That's their job.
And it's kind of unfortunate for everyone. Like I kind of
sucks.
Horses
didn't like it.
Well, it kind of sucks for the people who did a horseback riding tour that day and didn't know they were going to see like 300
that would be really
people
annoying.
On bikes. But it wasn't like they were going up the whole course. So hopefully they missed, most of the riders because they were just on this one little section. So, that's just how life goes. Like I feel like a lot of times people feel like if they're doing a race that no one else should be out there. And I think that's probably true for like an Enduro World Series race or a World Cup cross country race. No, they don't have people on there. But if you want to ride the best backcountry trails in the world, and have it all marked out for you and whatnot, like they can't do that and then not let anyone else on it. I think most people were smart enough to not.
And I would say two things. One, that's where the whole being a nice, polite person comes in. Like, these are trail users. They have worked hard to get there also. You don't deserve the trail more than them. Be polite, be nice. And then the second part is Breck did a really good job of posting notices at the trailheads of all these trails saying, this trail is going to be used for a bike race these days. And like, we would recommend finding a different trail. And so honestly, like, I don't know, I saw maybe 15 or 20 people the entire time I was out there who weren't part of the race.
I think it was more than that because there were like 12 hikers in one go at one point. But part of the trail that they're racing is the Colorado Trail. So you have people out there, they're doing a through hike. They get to a sign that says bike race today. What are they going to do? Like get off a day on their schedule? It kind of sucks for them. It sucks for you. But like if everybody's nice, it's not really a big deal.
Not a big deal. I wanted to quickly say thank you to Lawrence for the How's It Going avocado and to Mountain d'Aventure for the super chat.
Awesome.
And then I had, let's see.
Somebody asked about
warm up. I basically just spun to
There's
the
no warming
race as my warm-up. And if this were a one-day race, I would have done probably a 45-minute warm-up, 30 to 45-minute warm-up with some intervals and like really tried to get myself ready. Knowing that I was going to be on the bike for as many hours as I was, I did not do that. It was smarter for me to just ease into the race and use the first, 30, 40 minutes as a warm-up than it was to like tire myself out beforehand.
I will also say, like, on a single speed, most of these starts kind of had to be a warm-up. Like, you couldn't go hard in the start because it was too flat. So
yeah, there was also
it's not
that.
like
I
you
was,
were
like,
making
spun out.
moves off the start line.
No.
Someone asked, where are Lily and Jack? It's kind of their dinner time, so they're probably inside sitting around waiting for someone to feed them.
Yeah. Somebody asked about, they said, can you tell us more about your coach and the coaching services he provides? Yeah. Our coach is Mike Durner. He is in the chat.
He was.
Yep. I believe it's his. Yeah. If you are interested in getting in touch with Mike, send us a message on our Sid and Mackey contact form, sidmackey.com, and the About page, I think, and we can connect you with Mike. I'm not sure if he's actively taking athletes right now.
Hi. Maybe he can answer that.
But, he can either throw his email in here if he wants, or you guys can reach out to us and we can connect you with him because we love Mike and he's awesome. And he coaches a number of people who, we.
And he does a really good job getting you prepared for whatever like cockamamie idea you have. Like, it's like, oh, I'm going to Everest in 6 weeks. What can we do? And Mike's like,
all
let's
right,
go.
Here we go.
Or like, I think I'm going to do Breck Epic on a single speed in like mid-July.
He's like,
okay. That's like 4 weeks out.
Yeah.
All right. So,
but he also is really good at kind of specifically preparing you for your goals. So if your goal is to get in better shape or to, be able to ride longer or whatever, he can help you do that, whether or not it's race related. I love there we go. His email is in the chat, coachturner@gmail.com. We love working with Mike. Having a coach is great. Because you have somebody who's holding you, what's the word?
Accountable.
Thank you. Accountable.
But also like telling you to stop.
Yes.
Like when I was starting my gym workout at 8 p.m. the other night, because I was too tired in the afternoon to do it, Mackie was like, what would Mike say? And I was like, Mike would say I'm being an idiot. And then I didn't do it.
Yeah. So we definitely recommend having a coach. If you have fitness related goals, it's a great way to like have somebody guide you in that direction as opposed to just trying to figure it out yourself, which is really hard.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. So if you have quick questions, like toss them in. We can do kind of a round robin.
Totally.
In the meantime, I know we had a question from Liz on Instagram of how many calories did you intake over the whole, is that what it was?
Geez.
And we haven't added that up.
How many were consumed on and off the bike? But really, how many pancakes were crushed?
About 2 pancakes a day.
Was it 2?
Yeah, but they were Kodiak cakes, so they're pretty high calorie and
so 10 plus pancakes.
Mike says those are not the exact words that he would have said. That's probably true.
No, he would have said it nicer. He would have said, do you think this is a good idea, Sid? And then Sid would have said, no, this is me. White rim time trial. Maybe.
Payson and McAlvin's times probably be hard to beat on that one.
Yeah, and it's not really a goal for me. I prefer events where there is very difficult descending as well, because that plays to my strengths of being able to climb and descend.
What frame size do you ride? We both ride large.
Yep.
We're taller than you think.
We are 6 foot, 5'11".
Show us that hard bar. We didn't bring the buckle up here.
Oh,
that's okay. Well,
That's
maybe if there's pictures on Instagram.
Yeah.
How many flats? No.
No flats. How many different classes were there?
Oh.
Quite a few. There's a number of age groups. There's a open men, women, single speed men, women, and then there's a number of duo categories where there's 2 different duo options. Either you race together and the time of the second person is your time, so you should ride together, or you alternate days, one person, back and forth. And those are the relay. And then there's a couple of 3-day categories. So people who don't do the whole thing. So
have I ever done Breck Epic, and do I have plans to or want to? No, I have not. I would like to do it next year. Mackie owes me big over the past 2 years for
True story.
True support. He said he would be support for me, and I think I might actually prefer to have him do it with me as a duo.
There
So we might do that. I am a long way from doing Breck Epic at this point in my training, so that's kind of.
But it's nice to have a goal that you're like, you know that you want to be able to race Breck Epic. That's a goal. That's,
Were you bummed that you only got to wear the national champs jersey for one stage? I mean, it meant you were riding in the leaders jersey, so.
Plus, the leaders jersey did match our kits.
Yeah,
so,
the Stars and Stripes doesn't really match too well, as a couple people have been
unfortunately.
kind enough to point out the obvious. Can we compete in XC World Cups? No, not really.
Well, we don't have the points.
Yeah,
you have to get a certain number of points, so we'd have to
you
race
have to
a
do
lot
UCI
of XC
races, which we have not done.
Yeah.
Would you do Cape Epic? Yes, we'd love to. I really would love to go to South Africa. Not next year.
No.
Everything about gravel racing, Mackie's done a little bit. I think it wouldn't be a focus for us, but we'll probably do some at some point.
Totally. The more bikes that I can race, the happier I am.
Have we ridden the Kingdom Trails in Vermont? Oh, yes, we have.
We
both went to college in Vermont, actually. Yep. Little known fact.
Do you ever feel bad for crushing your competitors? Nope.
No. And nobody felt bad about all the single speed guys.
Dude, they were so cool. We had so much fun together.
And single speed, I feel like people are doing it for a reason. Like they want to be riding a single speed, whether they want the challenge or they're just nuts. Some of them are just nuts.
It's a true story.
Or they just like the simplicity of it. It's not like quite as cutthroat as the pro racing ranks, though. Not that the pro racing ranks.
I was gonna say, what's cool is that like people were just stoked for each other. Like, hey, you're doing great out there. Nice job. Like you passed me, I'll probably pass you back. Like everybody was super cool, and that's why I like racing events like Breck Epic. Is it's a very like community oriented thing.
And thanks to Stuart for the super chat.
Huge shout out. Really appreciate it.
Okay. One more minute.
All right. Have we ridden in New Zealand?
Yes.
Yes, we love New Zealand.
Iceman cometh.
Yes.
As in, it was on the schedule for this
What
year.
category of single speeder does Mackie fall into?
Are there categories? Oh, like, are you nuts?
Well, yeah.
Oh, you're in it for the challenge. Maybe a little bit of glory. Like, no, maybe a little bit of glory. But I think mostly, like, Mackie is kind of a person who takes something as, like, how could I make this harder? Yeah.
Been known to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, cool.
I think we have hit quite a few questions here. And, are we happy with Niner? Yes, we love them.
Double thumbs up.
Someone up here said, when am I going to race? I raced yesterday.
And not
the day
only
before.
that.
No, we're not.
We're not going to spoil it.
There will be a video on Friday. No spoilers. Everyone would be so mad if you spoiled it.
That's true.
It was kind of a downhill race, but it's okay. It's a start. And definitely thanks Trails to Ales for repping the Patreon. Thank you to everyone on Patreon for all of the support during Breck Epic.
Oh, it was awesome. And who joined us during the videos.
And everyone who joined us during the videos. Really cool. A lot of new faces there.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says check Insta for spoilers. There are always spoilers on Instagram. If you don't want spoilers, don't follow us on Instagram. We tried to delay our Instagram, but we couldn't do it. And then we never posted anything. So we just gave up.
Yeah.
And I also hope that Iceman isn't Mudman because
yeah.
Cool. All right. That was awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of fun. I hope we answered most of your questions. And
Friday.
See you Friday.
Sid Racing.
In this awkward part where we try to stop it and it won't stop.
End.
All right.
Yes.
Goodbye, everyone. Bye.